And hello YouTube, this is GSmaniamsmart, and I'm here in a brand new video for tutorials with GS. Today's tutorial, we're taking a look at Adobe Premiere Pro and taking a look at the export settings that you want to use when you're either uploading a video to YouTube, you're either archiving a video, or you're using it for a DVD, whatnot. We'll go over those settings and we'll see which ones are right for you. So if you have, we're just gonna jump right into it. If you have your video already completely edited, you're ready to go, then one thing I highly recommend you do to speed up rendering a little bit is go ahead and hit Control A to highlight everything in your timeline, head up to Sequence, and click Render Selection. Now what this will do, it'll basically render all of the effects that you've added to your footage, and it'll help the rendering process out a little in the end. This can take a little bit of time depending on how many effects you added, depending on how long your video is, depending on how high quality you've recorded in, and whatnot. So I recommend doing this. It speeds things up a little bit, and the things that rendering would have to do when you're exporting, it doesn't have to do anymore because you've done it here. And you'll see that this basically creates this green bar here from red or from yellow to green, which is just fine. However, I'm not gonna go through that entire thing because it'll take a few minutes. So after you've done that, you can go up to File and Export Media, and here is where the important part is. Now for your format, you always want to pick H.264. This is the best encoder for exporting video, especially for YouTube, because it wants you to use H.264. So most of the time you are going to be exporting to this. Apart from that, we have a preset, and for the most part, most of these presets are accurate. However, there are some things you can change, but essentially what you want to do is pick the preset that you've recorded your video in. Right now, this is gameplay footage that I have. So if you were recording in 1080, you want to pick YouTube 1080. If you were recording in 720, then you want to pick 720. One thing you do want to make sure before you pick a preset though is you want to make sure that all of these match up. Your source matches up and your output matches up. If your source and your output don't match up, then you may have some problems. So this summary window right here is pretty important. Just make sure your frames per second match up and make sure that your resolution matches up and whatnot. That is important as well. But like I said, for preset, they have a preset available for YouTube, and it's fairly good to use. I tend to use it a lot. However, there can be some things that can be changed. Now, the only thing you really want to be looking at is video and audio. Let's go over audio first real quick because it's not really much to change. You want to make sure you have stereo selected here, 320. You can pretty much max out everything in audio, have it set to high. You can max out everything in audio, and the reason why is because audio doesn't take too much space. So having everything set to max 48 Hertz right there, and 320 for the bitrate here, that's completely fine. Don't be afraid to max everything out here. Make sure this is on AAC, and from there on we can go ahead and head to video. Now, video for the width and the height, you don't need to worry about that because you've already selected your preset over here. Once we've selected YouTube 1080, then it basically gives us a 1920 by 1080 resolution. If you've selected 720, then it'll give you a 1280 by 720. So you don't need to mess with these numbers at all. The frame rate you want to keep the same because it was included in our preset as well. You can keep this as progressive, square pixels, NTSC, that's fine. If you're in the UK, you want to pick PAL. And for profile, you'll make sure this is set to high to give you the best quality. And for levels, if you want, you can boost this up to 5.1, but I've been using 4.0 and it's just fine. I've used 5.0 in the past and I haven't seen too huge of a difference. You may see certain ups in quality, but essentially 5.1 quality is usually for 4K footage, and if you're not recording in 4K footage, there's really no point to use it. However, if you want to, you can. I always use 4.0 and it's just fine. Now you can check mark render at maximum quality if you want. However, this will make rendering take a lot longer. It does do rendering at a better quality. However, I've never checkmarked this and my videos have been looking perfectly fine. But if you really want to, if you have a project that you really want to have some pride in, rendering at maximum def really doesn't harm to do. And the important part is right here. So all this is sort of optional. You can checkmark this if you want. You can put this to 5.0 if you want. And everything here is pretty much standard. But the important part here is bitrate. And this is generally what tends to decide what quality your video is. Now, for the most part, you always want to have 2 pass for VBR. And what this means is that it'll go through the rendering 2 times. If you have 1 pass, it'll only go through it 1 time. You always want to have 2 pass because it'll do a better job at rendering, especially if you don't have this check marked, or if you don't have use maximum render quality here, then VBR 2 pass is great. And essentially it's what YouTube recommends anyway, so use it because it's really good to use. And then here the bitrate is where you really want to pay attention. So by default it'll be set to 8, especially if you have the YouTube preset selected. It'll be set to 8. And if you're in a rush, if you want to get your video out quick, 8 is just fine. It's still gonna upload in fairly high quality. It's still gonna look very good. However, if you want it to look the best that it can look, you can set this to 15. Now be aware, this does increase your file size. As you see at the bottom here, estimated file size, it goes over 200. If I were to keep this at 8 like it was, then I'll basically be getting only 100 so megabytes in file size. So it depends on you. If you have the time to render it, I would put it at 15 because it really gives you the maximum quality. However, 8 is just fine. I've always been using 8 because I want to usually upload my stuff fairly quickly. Now, for maximum bitrate, here's where you also want to decide on what type of video you have. If you have a video that is very busy, is changing colors a lot, it's moving a lot, there's a lot of motion in it. For example, if you're doing a vlog and you're moving around a lot, this you want to have pretty high. In fact, I would have it at maximum 25. Because what this means is that the more motion there is in your footage, the more busier your footage is, the more bitrate it will need to keep the quality up. So having it at 25 wouldn't be a bad thing. Note that this is the maximum bitrate. It's not going to render your video at 25 bitrate. However, if it needs to use a higher bitrate for those busier parts of the footage, it can do it, which is great to have an option for Premiere Pro to do if it needs to do it. Now, if you're doing like a gameplay, if you have a screen recording or gameplay footage or tutorial footage like I have right here, you can pretty much keep this at the same setting of 8 and it really won't make a difference. Now, one thing I do want to state is that once again, I would say that you should put this at 15 or even at 20 because it can increase your quality. Like I said, when Premiere Pro needs to render at a high quality, it can. However, it's really not that important. Maximum bitrate is more important if you have a camcorder. If you're recording a vlog with a camcorder and it's a busy video, you want to have maximum bitrate higher. Now, one other thing I want to go over is the target bitrate. If you're not having a screen recording, if you're not having gameplay footage, if you're not doing a screen tutorial, if you're doing like a vlog where you're walking around, if you're doing some shooting on your camcorder on a Canon or something like that, and your specific camera shoots at a very high bitrate, you actually don't need to have this as high. The higher your camera's bitrate is, the lower you can have your target bitrate. So if your camcorder shoots at like 40, then you really don't need to have this at 15. You can have it at like 6 or so, which is just fine. But I would say if you want to stay safe, having 8 here and having perhaps 10 here or 12 here would be just fine. It really won't cause any problems. The main thing for bitrate though is file size. You don't want to put this all the way to max because what will happen is that eventually at a certain time quality really won't increase. You're basically creating a huge file that is not necessary, and quality won't increase. And besides, YouTube is going to run it through their system as well, and most of the time super high bitrate videos YouTube doesn't like, and it's not going to take it into account anyway. So you never want to have a target bitrate of maximum. You always want to have it at maximum 15 for YouTube. If you're archiving something, or if you're doing something for like a DVD, you can have it set higher to like 20 or so. But for YouTube specifically, you don't want to go over 15. And so yeah, I tend to just have this at 8 and this at 10. And that's pretty much it. Those are pretty much all the settings you'd want. Everything here, you can keep this the same. You can keep all this unchecked. I have heard that if you use previews while you're editing, you can check mark this and it will help your rendering out by speeding it up a little bit. But I've never really used it. But that's pretty much it. Hopefully you enjoyed the tutorial. Hopefully you learned something. If you have any questions or comments, go and leave in the comment section below. If you have any suggestions, definitely leave in the comment section below too. We're all here to learn. And plenty of other content on the channel about different tutorials, different software tutorials, more Premiere Pro tutorials also on the channel, and more to come as well. And yeah, thank you for watching as always, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching, and I hope this video helped you out in any way. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. It'll really help me out. If you didn't like it, you can leave a comment as well, giving some feedback. If you have any other comments or questions, please leave them in the comments as well, and I'll do my best to answer them. I usually respond to comments within 24 to 48 hours, depending on your question and depending on how busy I am. I have plenty of other content on my channel about different software tutorials and how-to videos, so if you're interested in that type of stuff, check it out. And if you like what you're seeing, you can subscribe too. Really appreciate it. You can also check out my other channels and social media as shown on the screen right now. And with that, thank you so much everyone, and this is GSmaniamsmart, and I'll be back sooner than you think. Don't go anywhere.